Hello everyone and welcome back to the Recreating Hypixel series. I have returned home finally so we can actually start coding and getting into things a little bit more in detail than I did originally. Obviously last episode I made a simple plugin where I just made some custom mobs. That was pretty much just an example while I was out of town, but today we're actually going to start coding the core system. We're going to get MySQL set up. We're going to go through those types of things just to see how we go ahead and get started on this. If you've never seen one of our coding videos before, I normally go more into depth on what I'm doing. In this video, I'm going to be just summarizing kind of what I'm doing. I may be copying and pasting code that I've already written. It may be a little bit different. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be a little different than our original coding series because this video is more informational about the process of recreating something like Hypixel. All right, let's get straight into this. So for the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a getter argument to the top of our project here, and I'm just going to add this to our class path, which will allow us to use this. And what this does is it uses a annotation to let us call back to this class without actually having a written out statement. It will add that written out statement when the project is compiled when we actually build the plugin. So it's just a little bit easier there. I like using it because it keeps it a little bit easier when we're calling things from different classes. We are going to add a second getter here, just like the same exact thing we just did above, but we're going to do this because it's actually going to be a static element, which requires a separate getter, and it's going to be just an instance of this core class. And the reason why I'm doing this is, I can't spell today, there we go. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to be calling this multiple times within our different classes. It's just useful to have in your main class. And then in order to initialize this, we just do instance equals this, just like that. Very simple, very easy to set up. And now what we can do is, what an example is, I can just go here and do get instance. So you can see I can pull this. This is what this getter does. It has this method, but it's just not written out here, which is really helpful for when we actually get into things. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be coding about here. We are going to be coding today MySQL and stuff. So what I've done is I've added our MySQL driver here. I've added some different, this is the system for using those annotations and stuff. And then this is just going to be something that we're going to use to compile with, because even though it's included in Spigot by default, I am using a Spigot jar directly because we may go into using some NMS stuff later on. So just to be sure, I'm compiling the newer version along with it because I've had some problems in the past with that. Now, while Hypixel's based on a 1.7.10 version, we're going to be coding on 1.8 just because obviously Hypixel doesn't let you on 1.7 anymore. There's really no reason to support it if you're coding something brand new from scratch. So we're just going to be using 1.8 for this video. What I like doing in all of my projects is I like adding a different section for each thing. So I'm going to do public void load managers. And the managers is actually going to be where everything's actually loaded for the plugin. We're not going to call it in an R and on enable. So we can just do load managers like that. And then anything we put in here is going to go ahead and be loaded for us when we do that. And we don't have any managers yet. We haven't created any classes. But we're going to get into that in just a moment. But what we need first is we actually need something to call it as a manager. So you can't just extend a class to a manager without actually having a manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new class, and this is just going to be called manager. Simple, very simple like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to add an all args constructor to the top of this class, and then in the class what we're going to do is we're going to call a getter, and then this is going to return a protected version of our core class as plugin. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow us in any class where we call manager or extend manager to call plugin, and that will return the instance from our main plugin, which is really cool. I do like how we do that because it just keeps everything a lot easier to do and manage. So when we talk about MySQL and we set up MySQL, what we're going to do is we're going to go in here, we're going to create a new package, and I'm just going to name this managers because we're going to put all our managers in here. Inside of our managers, we're going to create a new class, and I'm just going to call this MySQL manager just to keep it easy. If I'm going too fast, feel free to slow down the video. Obviously, this isn't just a coding tutorial. We're going through the steps of how I'm doing this a little faster than I would if this was a coding tutorial. And then what we're going to do is we're going to extend this class to manager, and then we're just going to go ahead and import the usage of this. So now you can see on the startup of this class, it's going to run whatever is in here. So it's grabbing that super of the plugin, which we got back to our core class. So we're grabbing the instance of our core class. So anywhere in here, you can now use plugin to go ahead and connect to that core class. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a few methods here. We're going to make a connect method because that's obviously what's going to connect when we go ahead and start it up. And then we're also going to add a message. And I haven't set up a color class, which I normally do, but I'm going to just go ahead and write this in for now, and we'll fix the error in a moment. So I'm just going to call this enabled MySQL manager. just like that. Keep it very easy. We'll make a color class in a moment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run something delayed. The reason we're going to do this is because we have to create the tables, but we don't want the tables to create before we actually connect to the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a bucket.getScheduler, which is going to let us delay a task. And we're going to do run task async because anything database related should be run not on the main thread. And we're going to call this back to plugin. So it's grabbing the main instance of the plugin. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go create tables. We don't have this method yet, but we are going to. So we're going to create tables. That simple. So let's go over what I'm doing here. We're going to call a connect method, which we don't have yet. We're going to print out a message, which we don't have the utility for yet. And then we're going to schedule a create tables for our MySQL database. We don't have the tables yet. We don't have anything like that, but we're going to get to that once we get through this. So then what do? That's our enable. Well, we should probably make a disable. So we're going to do another public void, and we're just going to call this shutdown. And what we're going to do with this is going to be allowing us to call the shutdown method when we actually close the server. So we're just going to do close, and then we're going to go ahead and do a color log, and then we're just going to go ahead and log that MySQL manager has been disabled. Just like that. We're not going to add any color or anything to it because we're going to add the color actually in the color side of it, which is pretty cool indeed. All right, let's talk about how we're actually going to connect to our database and stuff. There's a lot of ways you can do this. We are going to be using a very simple method, and I'm actually going to go ahead and copy in a lot of this to keep things easy. We're going to copy in our create table first. So create table is going to actually create the database info. Obviously, it's going to log an error because we don't actually have our get connection. We don't have our color yet. All of this is still coming in. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this method, which will create a table in the database for us. And we're obviously going to lose that within our create tables public void that we're going to create in a minute. We are going to paste in an execute, which is what this does, is it will go ahead and execute something on that thread. Obviously, all this is on an async thread. It's not on the main thread. So you can see we create a second thread here for this. And what this would do is this would be like any update or anything else on the database. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and paste in our select method. What this does is it's going to go ahead and select a thing from the database, which you can then use to update and et cetera, et cetera. So we'll go over what all this means. And we are going to add another class called select call in just a minute when we get through this next step. So that is most of what we're going to add in here, but you have to remember that we have not added our create tables and we have not created our connect yet. So why don't we go ahead and start with our create tables, because this is what's going to actually be created on this. So I like adding this at the top because it can be accessed easily. And we're going to do create tables. And you can see now that error is going to go away up here because we have this method now. Now, right now that method is empty, but we're going to go ahead and add a method. So we're going to do a color.log. And we're going to go ahead and log that we are going creating tables, whatever, just like that. And then what we're going to do in here is we're going to call that create table method that we just posted here. And you can see what it requires. It needs a name and then the info for the string. Now, if you've never used MySQL, the name is going to be the name of the table. The string is going to be what you're going to store in there. So we're going to go ahead and create a table. We're going to just name this table player because this is going to be all of our player data that we're going to store. Now, by default, Hypixel themselves uses MongoDB for this. We are going to be using MySQL just to keep it a little easier and make it a little more user-friendly if anybody wants to create this at home as well. But we're going to store a little bit of data here. We're going to store the UUID of the player, and this is going to be stored in a text format. And it's going to be a max of 36. So there we go. And this is going to be the primary key. So what we're going to do is we're going to type not null and then primary key, because what this is going to do is this is going to be what we're going to be able to call from different things when we select and update and execute updates. We're going to be able to sort by the UID, and it's always going to be there, and it's not going to be null, and it's never going to change based on the players. So we can store this in all of the different tables we create if we make mini games, et cetera, to keep things easy. And then we're going to obviously store the player name, and it's also going to be a text format. And the player name max is 16, so we don't have to have anything much like that. And this is where you can add any other info you have. Coins, gems, gold, whatever other stuff you have, we can store in here. To keep it easy, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and keep it easy and do coins, I believe. Or actually, coins is not the main thing. They do have gold. I'm not remembering exactly what Hypixel has. If you want to let me know down in the comments, I can sort this out later on. But I do know they have gold for their new shop in game. I do know they have network experience. So we're going to do network level. And then that's going to be also an integer. And then we're going to go ahead and do the EXP, because they do have that. That's how they calculate your network level. And then we will probably end up storing ranks in here as well. So what we can do is we can do a rank, and then we can also make this a text format, and we'll do a max of 20 characters because that's going to be what we're going to be able to have on the scoreboard and stuff. And then we can also store information here, such as their last join date, their last login. But I'm going to actually save that and not put it in here yet. I'm going to just keep the basic information that we're going to have for later. So I'm going to leave this here with just their UUID, the name of the player, the gold, the network level, the EXP, and the rank. Now, this is just going to create the table with this info in there. It's not actually going to fill out that info. We'll deal with that in a later episode. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and create that. All right, very cool. Very easy. Now we got to actually make our connect methods. So you can see there's still a lot of errors in here, and that's to be expected. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a method that calls this close. So we're just going to keep that very easy. It's just going to grab the data source, which I actually have to create at the top of the class. So we'll go ahead and paste that in right here. So we're going to create the data source, and then it's going to close it, and then that will be how it shuts down the server. Very easy indeed. Now we actually going to go ahead and add a check if it is actually initiated and connected. You can use this in your main class when you actually connect to it. If it's not, you can connect to it. If it is, you can check for errors, etc., etc. Very cool. All right, this is where it's going to get a little bit more complicated. We are going to connect to our actual MySQL database. So we're going to do this by hand. We're going to do a public, and then we're going to actually make this a try and catch. So it's going to be an exception. So a public exception connect. And what this means is we are going to have a try method. So we're going to do try, and then at the bottom, we're going to catch, and then we're going to catch any exception, and we can call this exception. And then when we catch that exception, all we're going to do is we're going to set that data source to null, just like that. And then we're going to return the exception. And then by default, we're going to return null. So it also will just go ahead and error out if we call this without actually connecting. So what this does is anything we put in here, if it fails, it's going to return null. So our plugin knows that it is not working correctly. Pretty easy, right? I believe it is. All right, now we can actually go ahead and set this up. So we're going to create a new MySQL config. All you have to do with this is do just like this. And then I'm going to call this new config. And then this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So we're going to set a URL. And what this URL is going to be the connection. So we're going to do JDBC. And then MySQL, and then we're going to do // and then this is where we're going to add a plus sign. So what this plus sign is you normally won't do this, but this is going to be the IP of your database. So for me, it's going to be localhost, just like that. And then you're going to go ahead and add another plus, and then you're going to add a dot because there's going to be a port here. And by default, your port is 3306. Now, obviously, you don't have to put pluses. You could put this all together, but to keep it neat and organized, I'm putting it all like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and name my database server data, just like that. So, or actually, I'll name it Hypixel server data to keep it easy. Hypixel server data, just like that. So now we are going to connect to our local host on 3306, the default thing, and we're going to connect to the database called server data. And what I'm actually missing here, as I just realized, is I'm missing a slash. So there we go. So we're connecting to our local host on 3306 for the Hypixel server data. And now we got to set our username. So you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to grab the config and you're just going to do set username. And this is going to be whatever your username is. I'm going to call it server. And then obviously, you guessed it, we're going to have to set the password. So set password. And I'm just going to name this Hypixel server, just like that. Keep it easy. Normally you would have like 1,000 things. And then I'm just going to paste in the rest of this so I don't have to manually type it out. What we're doing here is we're setting the maximum pool size, the connection timeouts, if there is any idle timeouts or max lifetimes for any of this. You don't really need to know what this means, but in the end, it is useful to have. So there we go. We have connected. You can see we are calling connect, and we are good to go. Obviously, we have a few other errors here that we're going to have to figure out and everything like that. We have a error here for the select call. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and paste this class in. I'll let you go ahead and take a look at it so you can see what it is. All it's doing is calling a result set, so you can go ahead and grab that from another class. Very easy. There we go. Now, obviously, you see get connection erroring, and this is to be expected because we haven't had anything that's get connection yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put in something for get connection, and all this does is grab that data source that we created through our config and gets the connection of it. Pretty easy, right? I think it is. So there we go. We have completed our MySQL class, and the only thing erroring is the color class. So why don't we go ahead and add the color class? We'll add it to the main class, and then we'll end this first video on how to connect to MySQL. All All right, so let's go ahead and create a utilities folder. I just like having a package called utilities because I can go ahead and throw anything into there, but I put it in the wrong place, of course. Okay, so I need to put a, where is it? It is a package, and it should be just utilities. There we go. Okay, now I can go ahead and create a class. I'm gonna call it color. Now you may be wondering, shouldn't you just call the default thing color? Well, pretty much, because default color inside of Bucket is chat color. So you can call it color without a problem. And let's talk about a little bit what I'm doing here. So I'm pasting in a translate method. I'm going to take whatever source code for the chat color I have, and I'm going to translate it through the Minecraft color codes, and I'm going to return the source. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and paste in this as well, where we go ahead and do that with a string list, just in case you don't have a normal string. And you have a list of them, it will also translate. But now we're going to add our log and everything else in. Now, what I like doing with all of this, and Hypixel doesn't personally do this, but to keep it easy and keep it together for this video, I'm going to add it in here. It's something I wish Hypixel did. Mineplex does it a lot. Is they have a module system where they go ahead and call a string, and you can call it like main or something. And what it's going to do is you're going to call a module, and then you're going to call the body of the text. And then when you're in here, what you're going to do is it's going to return, and then whatever chat color. So Hypixel normally uses red for their chat colors, so we can go ahead and use red for this. And then you're going to have whatever it is. So I'm going to do like a little bracket, and then I'm going to list out the module, and then I'm going to close that bracket. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the color. So I'm going to add a space, and then I'm going to do chat color dot like gray. And then I'm going to do color dot translate the body of that text. So let's go ahead and talk about what this is going to look like. It's going to mean right in front of the message, you have a red little thing with a little bracket around it, whatever module you call this from. So like if you're in game, you could call, let's say player.sendMessage, and then you do color.main, and then you put the module, so like TP, and then you type out the message. So then I'll be like, this is a TP. And then the message is going to be returning red color, and then it's going to be TP, and then you're going to have the message, this is a TP. So it's just like an easy way of doing that without actually spelling it out every time you do it. And this is also how we're going to do the logging. So if you remember, we use color.log quite a lot, and it's the same exact thing. So we're going to do another public static. We're going to do a void and call it log actually this time, because we're not actually returning something. And then we're going to do string message. So now we're going to go ahead and call this as a string message. And then we're going to do bucket.getConsoleSender.sendMessage. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do main. So we're calling the main message here. And the module, I'm just like naming debug to keep it easy. And then the body of the text is actually going to be that message, just like that. So we have successfully done this. For some reason, whoops, I forgot void here. That's why it's erroring. So there we go. We have called it. So anytime you log a message, it's going to say debug in the console and log that message. So if we go back here, we go ahead and import colors. There we go. We have no more errors inside of our MySQL manager. If we go back to our core, now we can actually go ahead and implement this. So we're going to go ahead and load a manager. And what we're going to do is we're going to do MySQL manager equals MySQL manager, just like this. And you may be wondering, why is this first one erroring? Well, we haven't added it up here. So this is where you're going to actually add the rest of your managers to it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this from the test project I did. So I'm going to go ahead and type in MySQL manager equals MySQL manager. There we go. We have loaded it. Now you may be wondering, is that all you have to do? No, it's not. Because remember, we have only loaded these managers after we've done this. So now we're going to have to go after in on enable. And we're going to do get MySQL manager, which is what this getter does up here for all of these different methods. And we're going to go ahead and connect. There we go. And then on shutdown, you're going to do the exact same thing, but then we're going to do shutdown. Perfect. We have successfully created our MySQL connection, and we are going to go ahead and connect to it. So why don't we go ahead and set up our exporting for this? So I'm going to go into my project structure. I'm going to go do an artifact just to keep it easy. I'm going to go from modules. I'm going to delete the server jar. We don't need that. I'm going to keep all of the other APIs in here that we're going to be using, and I'm going to press apply and OK. Then I'm going to go ahead and build the project, notations there, and then I'm going to go ahead and rebuild while it loads that. Now, while it does that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my test server folder. I'm going to go ahead and go into one of my 1.8 server test folder. There we go. I'll go ahead and delete this, delete that, so we just have the one thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in that jar that we created. I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. and I'm going to go ahead and start it up. Now, obviously, I don't have a database that matches those things. So we're going to expect, and we're going to just take a look at this. And you can see here, enabled MySQL manager. There's the debug thing. Very cool. Creating table, but you can see we got a null exception on our database because I don't actually have a database set up for this, which is what we're going to do real quick. You can see it's going to error because obviously I didn't shut it down properly, but then it's going to go reload complete, enabled MySQL manager, and then it's going to go ahead and try to create those tables. So if we go back to our thing here and we go into our Hypixel server, you can see our player table has been successfully created. We have our UUID, our name, our gold, network level, EXP, and ranks. Pretty easy, right? And then obviously you could have something at the end of this. This is like connection successful or tables created. So you can just put this here, tables created, something like that, just to keep it very easy. But overall, we've just created our MySQL connection to our plugin. Now, obviously, you can do this in a bunch of ways you want. You can see this only errored because I actually reloaded the server, not because I went ahead and stopped it properly. But if I go ahead and stop it properly, you can see there's going to be a connection error because we don't have anything that stops it gracefully yet. It just force stops it. But we do have our MySQL manager being disabled on that shutdown process. So overall, there we go. That is going to be this episode. I hope I didn't go too fast. I know it's pretty long. I wanted to get through it. I wanted to start setting it up. In the next video, which will hopefully come every week now that I'm home, we're going to continue expanding on this, and we're going to work on actually saving player data, getting that set up, and then we can work on our rank system and everything else once we get through that. So thanks so much for watching. Here's the first episode of this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Like a light, lighting up in the dark. You make it right, I forgot how to act, it's so classic. Every time you make me